Hello, my name is Darren Thomas and I am the Director of Educational Research Techniques. In this video, we're going to go over defining and giving examples of indirect instruction. So let's go ahead and see what we can learn. So as I've already told you, we're looking at indirect instruction. And so we're going to be looking at defining it. And I'm going to give you 3 examples of indirect instruction in action: advanced organizers, self-evaluation, and group discussions. So let's go ahead. So when we're talking about indirect instruction, we're talking about using inquiry that encourages higher order thinking skills. So in other words, we're trying to find ways to get students to learn without so much relying on lecture. That's kind of what it is. You're implying things, you're allowing them to discover things through questions, discussion, interaction, and to learn in that manner rather than focusing on the teacher sharing content directly with them. And so you're going to tap into things like constructivism, which is basically talking about meaning from personal experiences. So the students are going to share, stories from their lives. They're going to extract lessons from those things. And this is indirect instruction. And the main thing, and I've already been kind of implying this, which is not meant to be a joke, as this is a discussion on indirect instruction, but the teacher is not directly leading the learner. In other words, the students are taking control of their learning, and they are discovering what they know, what they do not know, and how to learn what they do not know. That's kind of how this is happening. So now we're going to look at some examples of indirect instruction and how it can take place in the classroom. So we're going to look at 3: advanced organizers, self-evaluation, and group discussion. So with the advanced organizer, you're using a visual that's going to try to capture whatever the teacher said in some form of a picture. So if you look here at the bottom of the screen, we have different eras of music, and underneath the different eras of music, we have different composers. And so this is a way to organize the learning experience for the student. However, you don't have to rely on the teacher to provide these kind of advanced organizers. As you can see in the second bullet, students can also make their own advanced organizers. And again, this is powerful because the student has to try to organize their thoughts in a manner in which it can be displayed in a pictorial manner, or using pictures or whatever, using boxes and lines and diagrams. And this is very, very tricky. If you've ever had to try to capture your conceptual framework for a research project in some sort of a picture using squares and diagrams and arrows, you know how difficult this can be to articulate, to try to take something that is written in text and put it in a picture so that it can explain the text in a visual manner. That is a very, very difficult thing to do, and a very, very powerful way to demonstrate learning and mastery for a student. And again, this is all a form of indirect learning, because throughout this whole process, the teacher is not controlling it. The teacher might provide feedback, they might provide hints on what to do, they might even grade or correct it or whatever, but it's really left to the student to figure out how to do this, and it's very challenging. And of course, something else that I forgot to mention is that when you move from direct instruction to indirect instruction, you begin to move higher up Bloom's taxonomy. And of course, as you go up the levels of, the cognitive domain, it becomes harder and harder to assess and to mark the type of output students might provide at the higher levels, because there's multiple ways of achieving the objectives of the assignment, which makes it very harder to grade the assignment objectively. Now, for our next one, we're looking at self-evaluation. So self-evaluation is when the students grade their own performance. And so what happens is that when they are marking their own assignments, when they are trying to judge how well they did, they become much more aware of what they have learned. And so it helps to trigger this sense of responsibility in trying to uncover the strengths and weaknesses of what they've done. If you really want to stump a student, ask them what they think about their own performance, because they're so focused on what the teacher thinks of their performance, they never take responsibility of judging their own abilities and skill set in terms of what they do well and what they do wrong. And so self-evaluation can be a very, very powerful tool to help to unlock a student's sense of autonomy and being able to judge their own performance based on some sort of standard that they develop, or maybe that is provided. And so some of the practical ways that a student can evaluate things on their own can include reflective journals, as an example, what did they learn? How do they think they did, etc. You can rely on rubrics. That's another way of doing this. Sometimes if you get them in groups, they can fill out these types of forms. And you're really trying to get them to focus on seeing, okay, what did I do here well? And what do I need to work on? And this is something that, again, many students are unaware of how they can improve on their own. They're always waiting for that external feedback from someone else. And our last example of how indirect instruction can appear in a classroom is through group discussion. And so when you have students get into groups and discuss things, it allows them to, of course, experience the opinions of others, to think aloud and to express and articulate their own position on something, while also being able to, defend through a debate and also developing critical thinking skills. Again, students are often shocked when they have to explain why they have a particular opinion or a position, because this is not something that can often be marked and graded. Good students often want to complete assignments well. And so, again, assignments tend to focus more at the lower levels of learning and thinking in terms of the cognitive domain. And so these students are robbed of the ability to try to think about what they think about something in their position, because they want to know the right answer so they can get the grade that they want and move on to the next assignment, next class, whatever. And so with indirect instruction, we're trying to stress students beyond just looking at their raw academic performance in terms of A, B, C, D, and looking more at being able to take responsibility for their own thought processes and what they believe, and being able to explain and to defend these type of things. And one avenue for developing that is through something like group discussion, which is captured under an example of indirect instruction. It's group discussion, not group instruction, excuse me. Now, in this particular video, to try to wrap it up, we just basically did two things. We defined what is indirect instruction, an inquiry method basically, and we provided some examples of how indirect instruction could be implemented in a classroom, whether it's through advanced organizers, self-evaluation, and of course, group discussion. Naturally, there are many other ways that this can happen in a classroom, but these are the ways that we discussed here. So, I want to thank you so much for watching this video. My name is Darren Thomas. I am the Director of Educational Research Techniques. Thank you for watching again, and take care.